Okay, welcome back to our next stitch in the Krafty Max BeadALong. The stitch that we're going to do now is right angle weave. This is one of those stitches that once you get it, you really get it. And it's very hard sometimes for people to visualize. I will do my best to teach you how to do it. There are multiple ways to do it. I will show you the way I do it. Again, I'm using 6-pound Fireline. Always my favorite. Tried lots of other threads, but Fireline is so much always the best. I've already threaded my needle. Now some people do use a stop bead. I don't. I just go ahead and wrap my pinky like I do for everything else 3 or 4 times, and just enough so it will hold, so when it won't slip off. You don't want to cut the circulation off your finger. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. Okay, so right angle weave this is how I'm going to have you think of it. Lots of squares put together. Now, when you were a kid in school, you probably drew a square and you went down and over and made a square. Now, to make the next square, you only needed to add 3 lines, correct? To make the next square, 3 lines. Okay? And you know what? I think I'm going to show you how this works, because it's much easier once you visualize it. So you make a square. The next square, if you're adding to it, you only needed to add 3 lines, correct? 3 lines. Okay, let's say you're now building onto that square. Still 3 lines. But now you only need 1, 2 lines. 1, 2 lines. So right angle weave is a bunch of squares put together. And so as we're doing it, you will notice that the first one you need 4. The next one, you'll use this bead that's already here and come around, and same with the next one. So the next one, you'll use this bead, and the next one, you'll use this bead and this bead, so that you only need these to make your square, and so on. So no matter what stones you use, no matter what types of beads you use and the shapes, ultimately, if you can visualize it like this with squares, it'll be much easier for you to understand. You build a square on top of a square on top of squares. So now let's go ahead and get started. This is one of the few stitches that I believe in tying knots. So what we're going to do, and you'll notice I have 2 sets of colors here, and there's a reason later on so you can visualize it. Okay. And also, if you are using any kind of Swarovski crystals, I recommend putting a seed bead in between. And what you'll do is the seed beads will be in place of these beads, not the crystals, because you don't want the thread on the edges of the crystals. So you add 4, because you need 4 sides to your square. Okay. And now you're going to go up the back end and through all 4 again. And so what you're going to do is, this is your dead tail, and your working tail is still down on your thread. Okay, is pull these tight. Now you want to leave enough of your dead tail to thread on a needle and go through and tie off again. You never want to cut right near one single knot. So now you've got your 4. You've gone around in a circle so they're tight. And you're going to I'm going to allow you to tie what's called a square knot. So if you go right over left the first time, then you need to go left over right the second time. And what that does is lock the knot so that one string's pulling one way, one string's pulling the other. Okay, again, you'll notice that I, once again, wrap the pencil wants to join us. Wrap the pinky thread around, or the dead tail around my pinky, and that is to hold it. See, now I can hold my work without much of a problem. So we have all 4. Now you have a knot right here. What I usually do, so that the knot does not show, is move my needle through one of the beads, left or right, whichever one you want to go, and pull just a little, and that'll pop that knot inside the bead. 1, it'll protect the knot, and 2, it keeps it out of the path of the thread. Okay, so there's one square. We're going to turn it kind of on its side, and even though it looks more like, say, a diamond or something like that, it's still a square. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So this stitch we work just like you read a book, from left to right, normally. If you're left-handed, it might change, but for me, that's the way I do it. Okay, so I have one wall of my square. I'm going to add 3 more. So I pick up 3 beads, and I'm sorry if I'm a little out of breath and I'm sniffling. The fires are just north of me here in North Florida and South Georgia, and we actually have ash coming down on the ground, so it's pretty icky outside, so it's kind of getting to my sinuses. So I add 3. Now, this is my working thread, okay? I'm going to come up the bottom of that so that when I pull it tight, it makes another square. Okay, now for me, what I usually do is flip my work over so that my working thread's now on the bottom, and I have to move to the other edge of this square. So I just move through the path. You'll notice I squeeze my fingers when I go to pull the thread. It stops it from tangling as much. Now, one thing to recommend too, and this doesn't matter what stitch you're doing, if you're trying to pull a stitch tight with your working thread, if you're pulling your working thread at an angle that does not go with the way the thread's supposed to go, it's going to open it up. If you pull your working thread at the same angle, it will tighten it up. So always try and pull at the same way that your thread is coming through the bead or through the stitch. So we now have 2. Let's add a third. So we have 1 wall. So we're going to add 3 walls. Go up through the bottom. Again, it doesn't matter. If this was coming out the bottom, then you'd go in through the top. You just have to go through the opposite side. Okay, pull it tight. Now, when you go to pull this tight, a lot of times the easiest thing is to go to the very outside edge here and pull. And then pull. Okay, and now you have 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares. Again, I flip my work, move my thread. Okay, we're going to add 1 more set of squares, and then we're going to move up to the next level. Okay, so there's my 3 squares, and it doesn't always line up perfectly. You have to kind of adjust a little. So I have 1 wall, and I need to add 3 walls. By the way, the beads I'm using are glass pearls. Go up through the bottom or the opposite. I turn my work. It's my choice, and part of the reason that I do that is because then every stitch I do, it's always coming out the same place. Now this time we're going to move up, so I'm going to move my thread from here up this wall and over to the top. So now you're looking at 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 squares, and my thread is coming out the top. Now, I'm going to block what I'm showing, what I've got before it, with my fingernail so that you can see. This is the square we're working on. So we're going to do the same thing we did on the bottom. We're going to add, this is 1 side, 2, 3, 4 sides. So we're going to add 3 more. Okay. We're going to go in the opposite, just like we did before. And if you're not doing it for a video, it's a little easier to keep it tension tight. Okay, so now, here comes the fun part. When you are coming out this bead, if you look at what you're doing, every single opening does not have a strap through it. There's a thread through it. There are at angles, but there's none going straight across. So from here, you don't want to go to this bead because now you'll have a thread right across there. So you want to go up to this bead. Okay. So I followed my path. So now let's do the next square. Try to visualize what I drew. So you have 1, 2, 3, and this will be your fourth. So we need 1, 2, 3, and this will be my fourth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this, because remember they kind of come in a circle. Oh, I didn't mean to catch that thread. There we go. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. Now, once again, here is what you don't want to do. You don't want your thread to go straight across. You want it to go at an angle, because when you are done, if you've done everything right, inside of each corner is opening. There's no threads across it. Okay, so now my thread is up here. Now let me release my tail there a little bit. Okay, so now let's do the logical again. You're here. We need to move over and add more here. So I'm going to move my thread through this one and down through this one. So over, well, over, and down. Okay. So my thread is coming out of this one, of that square. Okay. Don't want the thread to go straight across, so I'm going to move it over, because I can't add any beads here, through this one. Now what we want to do is add a square. There's 1, 2, 3, and this will be my fourth. So 1, 2, 3, and this will be my fourth. Okay. Watch what happens. Let me get my other tail out of there. Well, pull it tight, and look, there's a square. Okay, now threads here. We need to move across to here, but we can't add any beads there. So we're going to move up to the next bead. Okay. So now we're coming out of here. We need to do 1, 2, 3, and this will be 4. So just for your own reference, when you add your first, when you start your right angle weave, your first square is 4. Everything in a row beyond that is 3. When you move up to the next level, it's 3, but everyone after that is only 2. So we're going to go from here around this one and back up through that to make our loop. Okay. Let's pull that tight. And look at that. Okay. We now have 2 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4 wide, and 2 rows. So if you remember how we added this row, this is what we're going to do. We're going to step up. Okay. So it's coming out here. You can't add a bead here. This is a sidewall. So we're going to go through this one. We're going to turn the work. Remember, when you step up a row, you always add 3. We're going to come around. Pull that tight. I cannot add beads there, so I'm moving it around. And I know I keep covering it with my hands, but it's hard to keep it tight. Okay, so tighten up the row below it here. All right, so I came out here, I added 3, came back through, and now I've moved my thread around to here, but I can't add a bead there, so I'm going to move it over. There's 2 walls, so I have to add 2 more. So this is 1, 2, 3, this is 4, and I'm going to kind of make a cheat there, and I'm going to go from that bead to that bead instead of doing 2 pulls. Okay, coming down, I have to go across. As you move through the rows, you will have different angles and different ways that you add your beads, and that's fine. That happens all the time. Okay, so I added 2, going down and over, and you'll get yourself a little bit of a rhythm. One thing I try to recommend is do not go and do 2 or 3 circles with your thread on each one, because what'll happen is it'll be so stiff that you cannot move it. Okay? I'm going to add 2. I'm going to come around. And I'm going to go up. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares wide, 1, 2, 3 high. And again, just look at the squares. Okay, now I'm going to show you real quick, because I don't have much time on this video left, of how to turn this into circular right angle weave. What I'm doing is I'm moving my thread over to one of the edges. Now, there is a different way to do actual right angle weave that is circular. However, I recommend you do it this way. The reason is because it is so much easier to keep track of as you go, doing it flat and then zipping it up. Okay? So, we're going to put this over here. This is 1. We need 2, 3, 4. But what we're going to do is this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is why I did the second color. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and watch. Add this one in. It keeps getting caught. Pull it tight, and that's your 4 right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, you cannot go straight across, because then you will have the thread showing. So we're going to move it, and we're going to move it down to the next stitch or the next square. Okay, so think of it this way. There's 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And this will be my final for the round, because I have to go through all 4 beads at the same time. Okay, go down. And I can't go straight across. So I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to come back through this edge piece. Now I have 1, 2, 3, and this is my 4th. And watch. Zipped up tight. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3. And you have tubular right angle weave. Okay. To tie it off, you just weave through and tie a knot, and then weave through a little more so the tail won't come, just like I've showed you on all the other stitches. And that's it for right angle weave. I'll see you on the next one.